welcome to the Stop Shitting All Over Yourself podcast, the solo edition, where today I'm going to be talking about your weirdness as your superpower. Now, there are just too many things that can make an individual person feel weird, and it's all based off of our own life experiences. So what one person thinks is weird, another person can find totally normal. But despite how subjective weird can be, for many of us, it's something that we actually spend a lifetime trying to get away from. When I was little, people thought I was weird because I had such a huge gap. They'd call me donkey or rabbit, which at this stage of my life bothers me not at all, but when I was 6 years old, it was absolutely devastating. As I got older, I felt like the freak and the outsider because while all my friends would study hard and get good grades, I studied hard and still failed. I was constantly told that I was such a bright kid. If only I would apply myself, I would get better grades. And I was terrified that someone was going to discover that I had been applying myself all this time and that I wasn't getting good grades anyway. So the only conclusion that I could draw was that I was hopelessly stupid and that I had to hide it as much as I could. Moving through life, there were so many other reasons I was singled out as odd. I was socially awkward. The things I did stand out. That the things that I did to stand out or that I thought were cool got weird looks. I was a child of brown and white parents, and being mixed felt cool, but at the same time, it felt like a source of shame when I walked around the markets growing up and got stares or people would call me names because I was so obviously the odd one out. These are my weird things. So these are the things that made me feel weird as I was growing up. They came from my race, from my gender, from my artistic self-expression, my physical conditions, and my neurodivergence. Today, though, I want to talk specifically about my neurodivergence and chronic illness as it relates to being in the professional world and how that sense of quote unquote weird has impacted me over the years and how I have worked through my perspective on these characteristics. And I'm also going to share some stories of other people who have been through very similar experiences and how they dealt with it as well. Though I'm talking about the workspace, it is so important to remember that these kinds of attitudes that we're going to talk about prevail across industries. So you may be an entrepreneur and experience similar kinds of rejection from your customers, your clients, or coaches. Though you may have more control over how you respond to it and what your work framework looks like, it can still be incredibly damaging. So even though we're talking specifically about the professional world, I think it is really important to remember and recognize that these ideas impact us across the board, whether you are working at a company or whether you are an entrepreneur or a volunteer. These things do impact you. I'm going to start by talking about me now. So now, when I think about me now, I am actually an incredibly, extraordinarily capable person. And it's taken me years to be able to actually say that out loud without shame or embarrassment or, oh my God, are people going to think I'm too big for my britches? As I said earlier, when I was younger, every single report card said that I'd be great at school if I only applied myself. And what nobody knew or understood was that I was applying myself. I tried to study and learn. I wanted to be good at school because that would make me virtuous and a good person. I bought books on how to study better. I had checklists. I had, oh my God, so many different ways to like take notes and notebooks. And basically I was thinking to myself that if I learned the right technique or the right system, I would just get better at studying and get smarter. My parents tried tirelessly to get me to focus, and I just couldn't. I knew that I was applying myself, but once again, I was afraid that if they found out that I was actually applying myself, then they would realize that it's actually that I'm stupid, and I would be found out that I was defective, right? Got to the point eventually where I was just getting failing grades because I just didn't feel like it was worth the effort to put into school if I was going to be failing anyway. That was later on during my life and in my high school years. I mean, I tried, but what was the point? Now, as an adult, I understand a lot more about me then. I understand now that I have ADHD and that I'm autistic, and that those two puzzle pieces together created a lot of clarity for me because that explains a great deal about why I didn't do well in school. The systems that the school had set up were not designed for people like me. They were designed for everybody else, not me, right? Now, as I got older, it became a lot easier for me to overachieve in various areas. So when I was younger, I wasn't super hyper capable, but now that as I started to get older and move into the professional world, it became a lot easier for me to overachieve and do well because once I was outside the rigid confines of school, I was able to create systems to work with my disabilities, though I didn't actually know that that's what I was doing at the time. I found ways not to drop the ball, ways to maintain my to-do list so I didn't get distracted, ways to curtail my squirrel tendencies, ways to use my hyper focus and flow states to be able to gain maximum productivity for the people that I was working for. I created heuristics to help me find my resources, and I developed very strong those small habits to help keep me on track. As a result, when I was in the professional world, I was actually an incredibly high achiever with stellar reviews at work. The same systems that allowed me to keep myself alive outside of the workplace also allowed me to do really well in the workplace because of my neurodivergence, not in spite of it. I've also always maintained a very Bill and Ted demeanor in terms of the way that I talk to people. I'm very chill. I'm very relaxed. I call everybody dude. I talk to my customers as if we're best friends hanging out at dinner. I don't really have an air of professionalism to speak of in how I present myself. I am 100% authentically me, blue hair, tattoos and all the time. Like it's something that is very important to me at a certain stage in my life, probably around, I would say in my 20s, where I really truly realized, late 20s, where I truly realized that I didn't feel like I was ever going to be good enough conforming, because I've been trying to conform, and it wasn't working, right? I was feeling trapped, and I still wasn't getting where I wanted to go. And so I decided I was just going to lean in. I'm just going to lean into everything that is authentically me. So bit by bit, I started to shed the idea of how I was supposed to act at work or what I was supposed to say at work. And I really maintain this even to this day. I'll walk into a meeting with an investigator, whether you're the chief of a department, you're a giant investor for a biotech, doesn't matter. I'm going to talk to you the same way that I talk to everybody else, and I'm going to come in with my sparkles and my blue hair and my bright and colorful background, because that is who I am inside. Now, this has cost me. It's cost me promotions. It cost me positions and raises, because people tend to be looking for someone who looks more professional, who they can take more seriously, who has more gravitas. That is something that I have typically been told in the past. But for me, this whole idea of having a dress code at work is silly. I'm going to be really honest. I think it's absolutely silly. Why does it matter if I'm wearing jeans if I'm still an incredible research administrator or project manager? How is my choice of clothing in any way relevant to my performance other than to make it better because I'm more comfortable in what I'm wearing and being myself? Now, obviously, in the world that we live in now, we're able to mostly wear pajamas, or, you can wear shorts and a proper shirt or what have you. But my philosophy is that it doesn't actually matter what you are wearing, as long as you are wearing something that makes you feel good, right? The very things that are considered to be faux pas at work are the generators of my stellar performances. And you can't have one without the other. And that is really important, because for a lot of us, the very systems that we have developed to be able to navigate the world out there are the systems that make us good at what we do at our job. There is an article in the Huffington Post, which is actually what inspired this podcast. It was by Jill Griffin. And Jill Griffin shares her story about how she moved up the corporate ladder, achieving a position of leadership, all while battling her traumatic brain injury. When she was on a trip to Australia, she was walking next to a waterfall, and I guess she fell and hit her head really, really hard, significantly hard, to the point where she knew she had a concussion. Other people around her thought she had a concussion, but she was woozy and kind of just like, you're not really thinking straight when you've just hit your head. She's like, no, I'm fine. Especially if you consider the cost of medical care and healthcare, no, I'm fine. I'll be fine. We'll just wait and see. As it turned out, she did have a concussion that ultimately, and a traumatic brain injury that ended up impacting her for the rest of her life, continuously, even today. This invisible illness was hard enough for her to manage as being someone chronically ill, but her day-to-day tasks became more challenging as she constantly fought the extreme symptoms of her illness, which included being unable to hold her balance, unable to walk, hold her conversations sometime, and she appeared intoxicated in some cases because of her brain injury. In her article, she says, in the years following my injury, my brain's default was, if they know, I'll lose out on opportunities. Eventually, they'll fire me. And if I lost my job, then the unthinkable would happen. I'd lose my employer-sponsored health insurance, and then what would she do, right? She was seeing countless doctors trying to get a diagnosis, and without a diagnosis, she felt shame and guilt, which is so common among the chronically ill, because for many of us, we don't know what we have. We just know we have all these symptoms. We're seeing specialists, we're seeing doctors. They're saying, this is the problem, that's the problem. We'll do this test, we'll do that test. We are always out trying to get those tests done, getting a diagnosis. And really what you're trying to do is get the diagnosis so that you can validate that there's something wrong with you, that you're not making it up. Because otherwise, as an invisible illness, the kind of reception that you usually get is, oh, but you don't look sick, which is incredibly damaging, because just because someone doesn't look sick doesn't mean that they aren't sick, and it invalidates them, which makes them feel even worse and like they shouldn't be talking about their illness in the first place. And in fact, she talks about this, where she shares how she talked about, she didn't tell HR, she didn't tell anybody. And then she talks about the people that she did tell who were sympathetic, but it was really apparent to her that her admission was treated like an inconvenience or like a private matter, like your period, that you just don't talk about at work, right? Didn't really need to be addressed there. You need to keep your home and work life separate. These are something that we've been talking about for a long time on this podcast. Now, after 6 years of hiding, she finally got a diagnosis and had by this point become an expert in traumatic brain injury. So when she finally had that, and she'd reached a certain stage in her life where she was just tired of hiding, because if you don't know this, as somebody who is temporarily abled, because almost all of us are temporarily abled, at some point we're going to get older and maybe be less able, she realized that she was tired of hiding it, that the pressure of hiding it was just as traumatizing as the condition itself. So after 6 years of hiding, finally she has a diagnosis, and she decided to just stop asking for accommodations without justifying her issues. She actually just says, this is what I need. This is what I need. Could you please stop tapping on the table? Could you please stop moving around? She's able to articulate her needs, say what she requires to feel better, and move on from there. Eventually, she actually, so even through this illness, so over the 6 years, right, she's dealing with this illness, she's hiding it, she's traumatized because she's hiding it, she's having to show up at work even if she's not feeling well, she's dealing with judgment from her coworkers and colleagues who don't know that there's something wrong, and dismissal from people who think that this is not appropriate to show up in the workplace. So basically she has to put on a complete mask before she goes into her workplace. So even through all of that, she managed to achieve a leadership position at the top of her company, all with a brain illness, with all of this stuff happening, right? Here is the thing that I want to sort of get out there. This is where the superpower part comes in. Imagine, right? Imagine what she would be able to accomplish if she didn't have to mask all those things, right? Here's what I got out of this story. If she was able to accomplish this much in her career while experiencing the trauma of hiding her brain injury from her company, imagine how much more she could have done to help her company grow, how much she could have impacted the bottom line had she felt safe in her environment. Had she known that she would be heard, accommodated, and not treated as an inconvenience, or like her illness was something that needed to be hidden, but as a valuable member of the company who deserved whatever it is that she needed to feel safe and supported. Now, whether someone is considered weird because of the status quo, because of their gender expression, their creative expression, their race, their illness or disability, and I say this because even though specifically we're talking about neurodivergence and chronic illness today, people who are different in any way often feel the need to mask or present in a way that is acceptable to the predominant group that is in there. So many of us will mask so that we will fit in, hiding our true authentic selves. The fear of being found out, the fear of not being enough, of not fitting in, of not feeling welcome is a core and fundamental fear for us as human beings. We don't want to be rejected by the collective because that's where the safety lies. Even though there are a lot of initiatives out there to help create a safer work environment and to protect marginalized communities or people who don't typically fit into a capitalist, patriarchal, productive workspace, none of those make a difference. None of those will make a difference or can make a difference if there aren't perspective shifts on the individual level. So though a lot of companies have great initiatives and trainings and quizzes and they have experts come in, if we are not addressing these issues on an individual person-to-person level, right, then all you're doing is trying to legislate acceptance from the top, and you can't do that. You can't force someone to be welcoming to someone that they think is different from them and they are actively weirded out by, okay? Empathy and acceptance are the secret, because the more we become familiar and invite these differences into our lives, the more we start to see them as superpowers. And here's why I see them as superpowers. Because there are a few things that are unequivocal, okay? First is there are political, corporate, and societal structures in place that prevent many of us from going about our day-to-day lives the way that others do. We have had to find ways to make our differences work in systems that were not designed for us. Here's an example for you, okay? Imagine if everyone else in the world was telekinetic, so they could move things with their mind. I'm going to lift a pot with my mind. I have the force. Lift it with my mind, right? And there's a door in front of you. Now, because in this world, everyone is telekinetic, this door is flat glass, no handles, with only a crack right in the middle, teeny tiny little crack right in the middle where the doors meet, okay? Because we're all telekinetic, we can open the doors with our minds. So I'm just going to walk to the door, open door with my mind, and walk right through it. No problem. Easy as pie, right? You would expect this door to be automatic if you were suddenly beamed into this space. So you walk in and you walk to the door and you're not telekinetic. So you're going to walk right into that door because it's not going to open. You would expect it to open automatically, but it didn't. That's weird. You look for a handle. There's no handle. So you're standing here right in front of your place of work. First day, you're going in and you're like, I don't know how to get in here. How do I get in? You see other people going through other doors and the doors just seem to be opening for them. Why are those doors just opening for them? So you find yourself sitting outside in the cold, waiting for someone to come to this door so that they can open it for you. Finally, someone telekinetic comes by and they walk to the door and they open it with their mind, right? Now you're able to run back in. You're able to run in. Now the person who is telekinetic looks at you. They can't tell that you're not telekinetic. In their minds, they're wondering why you're so lazy. Why were you sitting out there just waiting for someone to open the door for you? What, are you too good to open the door for yourself? There is the challenge of the fact that you're already late for work because you've been sitting for 20 minutes waiting for someone to let you into the building. And that's only the first door. You still have 3 more doors to go through before you actually get to your office. You're going to be an hour late, and you've been an hour late for the last 3 weeks, or you're going to be an hour late for the next 3 weeks because you don't have telekinesis. There's nothing bad about you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. You just don't have that particular ability that someone else has. Sadly, everyone else has it except for you. So now you are feeling alone. Nobody understands you. They don't understand why you're always late for work. Why can't you get into work on time? This is the everyday life that someone with an invisible disability deals with. Every time you turn around as someone with an invisible illness, there seems to be something else, some other invisible door, glass door that you can't open, that you have to wait for someone to open for you, or you have to figure out how to make this door open. Maybe after a lot of work, you're like, oh my God, you know what? I found a creative solution. I figured out that if I use magnets, I can walk up to the door and do this, and the door will open. But it took you like 3 months to figure that out. You tried like 30 different things to make it work and you were late the whole time. But finally, you figured it out. You exercised a huge number of neurons in your brain trying to solve this problem. Creative thinking is what got you through there, right? Creative thinking. Now, what happens for all of us who are chronically ill or neurodivergent is that we are off the beaten path and we have to find creative solutions, which is exactly what most companies are working for. What happens for many of the people who have different frameworks from everyone else is that they end up having to find creative solutions, which is exactly what most companies are looking for. We figure out that it's a magnet that you can buy, that you carry it around, and if you move it the right way, you'll open the door, and it's magical. Now that skills come to you easily, and you can go through doors again. This is something that all companies are looking for. They're looking for people who can come up with creative solutions. And I guarantee to you, nobody comes up with more creative solutions than someone who is neurodivergent or chronically ill, because that's all our lives are. Paul Scantlebury created actually an entire list of the superpowers that you get when you have various types of illnesses. Generally speaking, you're going to find that you have higher problem solving abilities. You are resilient, even though you probably hate that word. Gosh, if you are someone who is chronically ill, you are sick of hearing the word, oh my God, you're so resilient, or brave. But nonetheless, you're still brave and you're still resilient, and it's a great superpower. You are empathetic, creative problem solving skills, innovation. You have to be innovative to make it in this world if you have a different framework. Your curiosity is greater, and you become more inclusive of others because you know what it feels like to be left out, and you don't want to be the person leaving anybody out. So you will try to invite more people into your circle. Thus, your circle grows in diversity, grows in skill sets, grows in ability, grows in talent pool, and ultimately creates the kind of community and organization that people want to be a part of. Here are some actually amazing specific benefits that he listed out. The link for this article is in the show notes, so I cannot recommend strongly enough that you read it. It will help you enormously. But what he talks about is specifically a bunch of a couple of illnesses. He talks about autism, helping you with logical reasoning, learning, and understanding information quickly. You get better at visualization, thinking and learning, precise and detail oriented. You get better at alternative problem solving. If you're dyslexic, you get better at seeing the bigger picture and recognizing patterns. You have improved spatial awareness. You can be highly creative and have an entrepreneurial mindset. What if you have hearing loss? You will be an attentive listener because you're always having to listen harder, so you're going to pay more attention to what people are saying. You get better at interpreting the body language and nonverbal cues. You are better at thinking and learning, and with your communication skills, because you have to be, because you are compensating for the hearing loss. If you have mental health issues, then you get much better at pattern recognition, risk identification, detail-oriented. You are diligent, you are very emotionally aware, and you have an excessive amount of empathy. If you have trouble seeing, your imagination and creativity is enhanced. You have enhanced sensory perception, memory skills, and communication skills. It is so important to recognize that even though the world at large has a tendency to perceive those who are disabled, chronically ill, neurodivergent, or have different frameworks than other people as somehow being harder to work with, more challenging to work with, may not be, you may need to accommodate them more, so it's a bit of a hassle. Though no matter how much they may think or those attitudes may prevail, it is so important for those of us who are within the community to recognize that that is their perspective and that is their mistake. Inside the community, we know that these are our superpowers, and we know that these are the things that make us who we are and make us good at what we do. And the thing that you can do now, the solution to all of this, so we find ourselves in this position right now where we have two opposing factors, seemingly opposing factors, where you have a corporate environment that has become habituated to being a certain way over the last 50 years or so. And then you have a group of people who want to be included in this environment, who are excited to be included in this environment, but who don't feel like it is a welcoming space for them. So how do we bring those two things together so that we have a match? Because the truth is, it is a perfect match, and it really, like, these are valuable people to have in your organization. But first, the attitudes and perspectives must change. Ruchika Chalchian talks about in her book, Inclusion on Purpose, she talks about how to create more inclusion and welcoming spaces for people who are different. And she talks about leading with empathy. Okay? Things only seem weird and different and hard to deal with if you don't understand them or if they're unfamiliar to you. So if you are someone who does find themselves unsure of how to handle someone who's chronically ill, or you feel like you could do better in your support, then what I would recommend is to expose yourself to a greater variety of people. Join groups and attend events that you wouldn't typically go to. If you're at an event and you notice someone sitting alone, think about what it must feel like to feel isolated and join them. Get to know them and make a new friend. That's what I do when I go to conferences, is I usually know a group of people who are there, but I typically will hang out with the group of people initially and a couple of times during the day, but during the lunch events or breakfast events, I will actually go and find someone who is sitting by themselves and sit next to them and develop a friendship, because I want to create community and bring people together. And the only way to do that is to actively go and speak with people. Which, by the way, is terrifying for someone who is neurodivergent and has chronic anxiety and social anxiety. But The desire I have to create a welcoming environment so that we all feel good is greater than my level of anxiety. And so I will face that anxiety and go take the action, even though it scares me, because it's just as scary for the other person. The more diverse friendships and relationships you have outside of work, the better equipped you'll be to be an ally for people inside of work. Let me say that again, because this is really important. The more diverse friendships and relationships you have outside of work, the better equipped you'll be to be an ally to people inside of work. This isn't about diversity initiatives within your company. This is about you taking the initiative to expand your network to include more diverse types of people. And that exposure in and of itself is going to make you a better ally and accomplice at work. The more people you hang out with that are in wheelchairs or are hard of hearings or have an invisible illness, the less awkward it's going to make you feel, because it becomes a part of your everyday life. You won't stare or wonder, and the disability doesn't become a giant elephant in the room that you're trying really hard not to bring up. If you're someone who feels comfortable talking about your conditions, like me, then make it known. Talk about them. Let other people ask you questions. Set boundaries when appropriate to educate them about what is and isn't appropriate. There are tons of protections for us out there, but if you're in the community, then you know that they're mostly token efforts. People take trainings and pay half attention, and in the end, nothing changes for those of us on the ground. So for those of us who are willing to talk about our invisible illnesses and feel comfortable doing so, that will empower others to speak up as well, but it will also demystify it and make it just a normal part of everyday work, as opposed to making it something weird and different to people who may not understand the experience as well. Now, if you are in a position to hire people, and this one is actually really, really important, because this is where the change truly happens. We can all make changes on the ground right now. We can all make friends outside of our circle and get to know a diverse group of people. But in the end, representation is key. Representation is key. We can create a welcome environment, but you have to be able to represent the people that you're talking to and talking about. If you are in a position to hire people, pay special attention to the diverse candidates. I always declare my disabilities on my applications. Does that mean that I don't get callbacks from some places that don't want to deal with the hassle of someone with my issues? Absolutely. But the truth is if a company is going to reject me for that, then I dodged a bullet. Because getting hired by them just means that I would spend the next part of my career fighting to prove my value despite my framework, not having value because of my framework. I use the word weird because that's the fear at our core. That people will think we're weird, that they won't get us and will be rejected. It is everyone's responsibility to create an environment where diverse groups of people feel welcome and like the organization was designed for them, not merely accommodating them. It is my great privilege to be among incredibly brave and resilient people who are systemically able to stand up and say, I'm chronically ill, I'm neurodivergent, and to help bring visibility to these issues. For many others, they don't have that luxury and are forced to hide it. I want to invite you to think about the kind of environment you want to create around you. Your words are magic, and you have incredible power. You have the ability to create an aura of acceptance and empathy. Or you can reinforce an environment where people feel scared of showing up as their authentic selves, thus deepening their suffering. It starts with taking small action. You can start by following the Invisible Disabilities hashtag on Instagram, or Smarter in Seconds with Blair Imani. These two are great small steps that you can take to inform yourself more and move into the space where you can create a more welcoming environment for people with a different framework. Then come back and tell me how amazing it feels, because I'm going to tell you, there is nothing better than making someone else feel good. Once you start, you are not going to be able to stop creating an environment where people feel like they belong.